Hi everyone, this is Dr. Victoria Scerbo speaking to you from the Seeds of Transformation Healing Center once again. This is the third part of my Donald Trump Astro Kabbalah Numerology video, and I want to go over his astrological chart. And I do look at the astrological chart from a evolutionary astrology point of view. And that has to do with the journey of the soul from lifetime to lifetime. And so we'll look at the soul, we'll look at the karmic axis, which is really sort of what the person has come in with, and then what they are here to explore as a soul, as a personality, etc. I will be talking a little bit while I talk about the astrology. I will go back to some of the numbers that I spoke of and some of the places on the Tree of Life where we find his numbers. I'll connect it with the astrology, and I don't have the technology to put them side by side, etc. So if you maybe want to look at those videos first, you may be able to sort of get a more complete picture of what I want to talk about. So let's get started with his chart. Okay, here we go. So this is Donald Trump's chart. Donald Trump was born June 14th, 1946 at 10:54 a.m. in Jamaica, New York. And so if we look at this chart as a whole, the first thing, so just a technical for those people who are, astrologers out there and want to know some more technical stuff. I use the porphyry house system. So that's how you get the cusps of his houses. So if we look at this chart, just looking at it as a whole, the first thing you may notice is that he has the majority of his the majority of his planets on the left side of the chart. Okay, and we can see if we separate the chart out, this being the center line, you'll see he has a lot more stuff going on here. Actually, on this side of the chart, all he has is his moon and his south node, and then this is the polarity point of Pluto, which I'll talk about shortly. But so he has most of the planets on the left side of the chart, and that is a sign of somebody who is self-made. That is somebody who comes into the life to make their mark. It's more about them than it is about relationships. And they come in and they become the captain of their own ships, and they live and die by their own hand. So this is the self-made person. Okay, George W. Bush had a similar chart. He had, I believe, most of his planets on the left side of the chart as well. And so we can certainly see that as true in Donald Trump's life. Okay. The other thing is that even if we look at the left side of the chart, he has the majority of planets up here, the left upper side of the chart, and that's somebody who has come in to a certain extent for world service. Okay. The 10th, 11th, and 12th houses are the most collective houses. He has his personal planets. Let's see, all his personal planets, of course, except the moon, which is down here at his node in the 4th house, in that quarter of the chart. And so he comes in as a personality. Okay? Now, in evolutionary astrology, we look at the soul first. And the soul in a chart, we look to the planet Pluto. And here we have Pluto here in the 10th house. He has Pluto at 10 degrees, 3 minutes of Leo. Now, Pluto takes a really long time to go around the zodiac. And so there are whole swaths of people who have Pluto in Leo, or Pluto in any sign, right? And so these are the generation, I guess we could call them the baby boomers or the post-war generation, where Pluto is your desire and what makes you feel most secure. And so we have a whole generation of people coming in with the desire to self-express, the desire to be special, okay? And so he has this zeitgeist of his generation. And we can sort of see that if we look at the difference between the presidents who had Pluto in Leo as opposed to the president who had Pluto in Virgo, which was Barack Obama. He was the first president of the Pluto and Virgo generation. We have Bill Clinton, we have George W. Bush, and now we have Donald Trump, all Pluto and Leos, and all big personalities in one way or another. So they really did embody that Leo quality. Of course, Clinton was a Leo, and George Bush did have Pluto in Leo in the first house, so that really brought up the Leo. But we can see the difference in energy between the presidents who had Pluto in Leo and Pluto in Virgo. So Pluto in Leo is a generational signature, but what makes Pluto unique to each individual is where Pluto falls in the chart. And Pluto in Donald Trump's chart falls in the 12th house. Okay. Now the 12th house is a mysterious house. It's the house that is associated naturally with Pisces. And so there is a mystical quality to that house. There's an illusionary quality to that house. There's a whole lot of idea of like smoke and mirrors. Is it there? Is it not there? There's a real tenuous grasp of reality, because in a way it is the place of unreality. Okay, it's the place before we incarnate. You know, it's the in-between place. It's the place where you can get lost. You know, it rules large institutions, prisons, asylums, ashrams, you know, places where you can just sort of disappear. And so this is unique to Donald Trump. Now, if you put Pluto in Leo, which wants to be recognized and wants to self-express and wants to be a star, in the 12th house, here we have a Pluto that feels like maybe they don't matter, or they're disappeared, or, you know, there's this sense of I feel like there's a sense of terror in the soul that they don't matter. And literally, like, not mattering has to do with that 12th house, because the 6th house is matter, like actual matter, and the 12th house is non-matter, right? It's Pisces. So here's a soul that comes in that wants to matter, okay? And the soul can evolve itself through the polarity point. And for Donald Trump, the polarity point is in the 6th house, the opposite house of the 12th. And the 6th house is about real things. It's a Virgo house. It's about, you know, doing the work and trying to perfect things, okay? It's about being of service to people, okay? And in his own way, I guess he has been of service. He certainly built enough buildings. People have to live in them, right? So in his own way, he has been of service. And he continues to be of service to us. And we'll talk about that. It's in Aquarius, however. And so it really is about him, his soul wants to be of service in a very practical way for the benefit of the whole. This is his soul's urge. This is what the soul is. In order to evolve, the soul is being required to go in that direction. The thing with the soul is that the soul mostly expresses itself in unconscious ways. In a lot of ways, it's who's driving the bus. And who decides which way to go. I mean, maybe the personality drives the bus, but it is the soul that decides what street you're going to go down. okay? And sometimes you don't know why you're going there because the soul is unconscious. The soul is also emotional. And so we're dealing with deep emotions. And, our emotions aren't always easily discerned. They're especially having that Pluto in the 12th house. It's very difficult. Things in the 12th house are very hard to see. Okay? The 12th house is also the house of hidden enemies. So when you have stress, meaning planets in the 12th house, you can sometimes feel as though people are against you, and so there can be some like paranoid tendencies. And there's that old expression: just because you're paranoid doesn't mean that people aren't trying to get you. So, but I feel as though, like, just looking at his chart and connecting it to some past life stuff that I feel he has, that I think in past lives that was the case. In past lives he may have been the king and he may have been betrayed, and this life he doesn't want to do that. This life he's going to do everything he can to be, which is very Leo, and obviously very Donald Trump, because that's what he does. I mean, he's got his name all over everything. Okay, so that is the unconscious soul drive. Now, that he is unconscious of, perhaps, but consciously we look to the nodes of the moon, because the nodes of the moon is part of the karmic axis. The nodes of the moon are part of the karmic axis along with Pluto, and the karmic axis is sort of what we bring forward from past lives. And so the past is the south node of the moon, and he has the south node of the moon here in the 4th house. He has a south node of the moon in Sagittarius. This is somebody who knows their mind, believes what they believe, okay? It's also in the 4th house, and so the 4th house is real estate, okay? So real estate is a natural fit for Donald Trump. He understands it, he knows it, and then he has his moon right next to his south node. Now, the nodes of the moon are the nodes of the moon, and so they are the conscious part of us, the evolutionary edge, or the evolution of our emotions and our feelings, okay? And so having the moon in a conjunction with the south node, which is the past, this is somebody who reacts and responds to life through the glasses or the vision, the goggles of the past. Okay, so he's very past oriented, and so this is somebody who's very sensitive of past slights. Having the moon in Sagittarius will sometimes indicate somebody whose mother, because the moon is mother, or nurturing parent, and in the case it was probably his mother because his father was much more of an authoritarian person. He came from a traditional household where the father was the king and the mother was, I guess, the queen or whatever. I'm not sure, but that moon in Sagittarius is very freedom loving, and so maybe she was not so much about the family, but more about her going out into society or doing her thing. I don't know that much about his mother, so I don't want to speak about her. But a lot of times with Sagittarius is that they're very, they're sort of out in the world, and they want to. There's a freedom-loving quality to the Sagittarius moon, and sometimes, if you have a moon in Sag, your mother was very much like that. Sort of always out and not home for you. That could be possible. Although, as I said, I don't know about him. But for some, I've seen that in charts with other people. I mean, Donald Trump isn't my client, so I'm guessing at that. Okay. So, in order for him to evolve his personality, which is what we see with the nodes of the moon and the moon, is he needs to move up to that 10th house. And the 10th house is the house of public standing. And he has his 10th house, the north node in the 10th house, in the sign of Gemini. And Gemini really is a sign about duality and information and you know, seeing, contrasting and comparing and contrasting. Gemini doesn't really have, we'll say, a moral compass, in that it's not so interested in about the morality of the information. It's just more interested in the information. Now he has his sun conjunct the North Node on one side, and he has Uranus in Gemini on the other side. He was born during an eclipse, a lunar eclipse. So that makes him alone a Uranian expression. People who were born around eclipses, especially on the day of the eclipse, have a Uranian energy, breaking free from the social order kind of energy. And then he has Uranus on that North Node. So that, in fact, the midpoint between his Sun and Uranus is his North Node. So he is a Uranian influence. And what Uranus does is Uranus breaks all the rules. Okay? And so we can certainly see him doing that on both sides. You know, what he says, not, you know, he says one thing, then he says the exact opposite thing in the same breath. It's very disorienting for people who are used to structure, and this is the way it's always been done. The president has always done this, and he's just blowing it all up. Okay, a candidate never says this. He said it, you know, and whether you agree with him or not, he said it, and it changed things, right? He's really just blowing everything up. Now there's a function to that, so we'll talk about that. But so he's come in to become an authority in the world, and he certainly has done that. Okay, so next thing we're going to talk about are the rulers of his nodes. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. So one of the ways to evaluate the nodal axis is to look at the rulers of the nodes by house and sign. Okay, we're going to go with sign first. Okay, so we talked about his south node. So let's talk about the past. Now the south node is both the places we can get stuck, but it's also talents and abilities that we bring back from past lives. And in a lot of ways, the South Node, I see the South Node connected to, in numerology, the outer personality vibration. Okay, this is something that you worked on, you've been good at, but can sometimes, you know, get you into a little bit of trouble. And so here we have his South Node in the sign of Sagittarius in the 4th house. So by sign, the ruler of Sagittarius is Jupiter. And where do we find Jupiter? Well, we have Jupiter here in his 2nd house of resources. Okay? He has Jupiter at 17 degrees Libra, 27 minutes. Jupiter, he's been having his Jupiter return, right? Jupiter is backed off of that, but we'll go over that again. One of the things that's probably keeping him, there's a sort of a Teflon quality about him, and that's partly through the protection of Jupiter, I believe. Okay, but what's happening is Jupiter right now is turning retrograde. I mean, it's going to be turning direct soon, and it's right around his Chiron. He has Chiron at 14 degrees 55 minutes of Libra in that 2nd house, and then he also has Neptune in that 2nd house. But we're talking about Jupiter right now. Jupiter is conjunct Chiron, okay, and so we have to sort of include that in a way, right? But having Jupiter in the house as the ruler of his South Node, and having it in Libra. The South Node is a place of security, but it's also a place that can get you into trouble. And so Jupiter in Libra is his relationships. So he has relationships with people who both aid him and can get him into trouble. And we can see that, right? We can see that. There are other things in the chart that also talk about that, okay? And so we have this. So what makes him feel secure, of course, is money. that second house, right? That Taurus house. If we look at the South Node by ruler, natural ruler by house, we have to look at his moon, because his South Node's in the 4th house and his moon is actually there. And so that brings that, so there's real, I want to say deep insecurity. Now, what's the reason for that deep insecurity? I personally feel like, again, this is a past life dynamic where he was betrayed by somebody very close to him, some sort of partner, and he lost all his money. I mean, that's what it feels like to me. And so that sort of drives him to continuously make money. Like, there's never enough. There's never going to be enough money because he has this wound. And remember, he has Jupiter conjunct Chiron. Chiron is the wound, and Chiron in Libra is wounds around relationships. Okay, and so he has been wounded in the past. Now we can also look to see what other things are going on with his Jupiter as far as aspects. And the main aspects I see is he has a trine to his sun of Jupiter. So Jupiter trines his sun. That's a nice thing. That really is sort of like bigger, better, larger than life. So that helps his larger than life persona. Okay. He also has Jupiter. Let me see. Looks like Jupiter is square Saturn. Yes, we have. It's not as tight. Jupiter is also trine Uranus, and trine his North Node. So this Jupiter, this sort of like bigger than, larger than life, is potentiated by these trines to Jupiter, and because Chiron is right there, his wound is as evident. And so for those people who can see the wound, it's very evident. And he is who he is, and that's who he is. And it's big, and and on some level it's reflecting something that we need to look at, right? Okay. So let's see what else. And so we have a square to Saturn. Saturn and Jupiter in a relationship to each other is the social, is about society and how you sort of function in society. It is in a square to each other. In the aspects and phases, which there's 8 phases of how two planets can relate to each other. This is called the crescent phase. It's a square, it's a crescent phase square. So this is somebody who really wants to break out of the past. This is somebody who wants to break out of the past and create structures in order to do just that. My experience with Jupiter, my experience with crescent phase people, when it comes to whatever 2 planets that you're dealing with, is they are builders. Okay, they're trying to escape the past by building the future. Okay, so we can see that happening as well in his chart. So. And he has Saturn in Cancer, which brings us back to his moon in that 4th house. So all of this building, all of this need to be bigger than life and out there and stuff really comes from a deep core of insecurity. Saturn in Cancer is somebody who wasn't nurtured. Okay? It's a very difficult position for Saturn. Saturn is in its I think it's is it fall or detriment in Cancer. So that's a difficult position to have your Saturn in for anybody. Okay? All right. Next we'll talk about his North Node. Okay, so let's talk about his North Node. He has his North Node up here in Gemini. And so we need to look at both Mercury as the ruler of the sign of his North Node, and we have to look at Saturn, which is the ruler of his North Node by house. So we have Mercury right here. Mercury is at 8 degrees 50 can't read that, 52 minutes of Cancer. And he has Saturn, which is the ruler by house, at 23 degrees of Cancer, 49 minutes, which incidentally is in a conjunction to his Venus. Saturn conjunct Venus is often seen in the charts of people who are real estate people. I have a friend who's she loves dabbling in real estate, although that's not her primary way of making money. She does like to dabble, and she finds it fascinating. For me, not me, but she does. She's good at it. And I see that in a lot of people who have Saturn and Venus conjunct like that. Very serious, and they're very serious about money, okay? And they also feel like they never have enough. There's this sense of impending poverty at every turn. It sort of drives them, in a way, drives their bus, so to speak. And we've, talked about that with Donald Trump. I mean, how much is enough? Not enough is enough, right? There's never enough. It's like a hole that can't be filled, Okay, so his sun, his North Node, ruled by Gemini. Now let's see, ruled by my Mercury. Let's see what aspects he has to Mercury here. He has the most interesting aspect to his Mercury is that Mercury is actually square his Neptune. Now Mercury square Neptune, Neptune is there in that second house at 5 degrees 51 minutes retrograde in Libra, and then he has his Mercury at 8 degrees 52 minutes. This is somebody who doesn't tell the truth, okay? Mercury square Neptune is difficult, okay, because it's very easy for them to lie, to make up stories, and they may not even know they're doing it, or if they know they're doing it, they don't care. So we can see that, and it's very possible, because Neptune is in that second house, that he lies about how much money he has. I know this is something that a lot of people have talked about, and because Neptune is Chiron, a sandwich between Neptune and Jupiter, that could very well be the case. I think they did a roast for him many years ago, and the roasts are pretty awful. I never really, they're sort of funny, but I always find them just a little bit too awkward and mean. But they said they gave him the thing that what do they not want to talk about? What are they not allowed to say anything about? And he said his money. So that was the most important thing. Like, they could say things about his family, or they could say things about him personally, or his businesses, but they couldn't question his money. Okay, and this is a core need for him. He really needs, in order to feel secure, to feel like he has the most and the best and the most wonderful. On a certain level, I really I feel for this man. I really do. Okay. So that's the major aspect with Mercury. And so by house, we have Saturn. The major aspect here is the conjunction to Venus, okay, which I talked about. Let's see. And then, of course, Saturn is square Jupiter, as we said before. Saturn is in conjunct his moon, okay? This is somebody who... Saturn and the moon is a planetary pair that describes how you were parented. And the interaction is an inconjunct, and it's on the Virgo side. So he was criticized by his parents, okay? Or certainly his dad, because we know that. But there was, and maybe even the interaction between his mother and father may have been very critical. And so that's sort of how he was parented, and that's how he parents, I would say. I've heard stories, but I don't want to repeat them here. I mean, they're common knowledge, so it's not like it's not a mystery. So we have that. Okay, so here we have this person who doesn't feel like he ever has enough, and it feels as though he's being constantly criticized. And of course, that's what's happening. He's being constantly criticized for whatever, whatever reason people do it. Okay. Let's see. And right, so those are the major aspects we're dealing with. So we can see this person as somebody who is driven by a core sense of insecurity, a core sense of not being good enough. And quite honestly, who couldn't relate to that? I mean, who couldn't relate to it? And so for those who relate to feeling left out and victimized, they kind of, they see him in, they see themselves, him in themselves in him. You know what I'm saying. Okay. And then, of course, there is those people who just, nobody wants to be insecure. Let's put it that way. Neither does he, right? But he creates a lot of insecurity because what he's doing, what his function is to break down the structures of the social order. And he does that. And him as a person, he's very Uranian. It's going to be very difficult to pin him down to anything. Okay? And so for those people who think that he is, going to go to jail or whatever, I don't know, whatever people think, he's going to be held accountable. He may not be held accountable in the way that will satisfy you. And so I think we need to really sort of just look and see what he is opening up. He has actually said a lot of truthful things, right next to a lot of untruthful things, but we have to remember that truth is relative, right? There's no absolute truth. We live in a dual existence, and so one person's poison is another person's medicine. So knowing that and trying to stay open to the process. What I want to put forth, I hope this was helpful. What I want to put forth is that our president is somebody who is deeply wounded, reflecting back to us our wounds. And the only thing that heals is love. And so I personally don't disagree. I personally don't agree with many of the things he does, almost none of it. I did agree with some of the things that he said during the campaign, but he hasn't really sort of done what the things that I agreed with are not things that he pursued. He went into a whole different direction. But he is a surprising figure. We don't know how this is all what's gonna go on. I will say that the eclipses of February hit his chart very hard, and the eclipses of August will also hit his chart very hard. And eclipses are Uranian, and America is in the throes of an identity crisis. And so we have to figure out who we are and what we stand for. And in his way, in his Uranian way, that's what Donald Trump is helping us to see. So let's keep our eyes open, our hearts open. Let's build bridges, okay? There are some people who will never agree with us, and we have to be okay with that. Just send them love. Protect yourself, of course, and send them love. And hopefully we can move through this time. The United States will be having their Pluto return in 2022. And so all the wounds are coming up now. All the abuses of power are coming up now for us to look at, to recognize, and to heal. Who will we be in America? We have a special destiny as a country. There is no other country like America, truly and honestly. And so what our future is going to be depends on what we do right now. And the most important thing that we can do right now is to love. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will, this part 3, and if you have any questions, comments, please leave them below. If you'd like to contact me for reading, I could be reached at vicky@theseedstransformation.com. Please keep your comments respectful. If I get anything creepy, I will take them off, and I'm open to, ideas. So if you show respect, so will I. Have a great day. See you again soon.